If the government's planned tax to raise $10.5 billion from the mining industry goes ahead, 43% of the money raised will come from New South Wales, and most of the coal mines are in the Hunter. Minerals Council CEO Nikki Williams says the Prime Minister may have been in Newcastle for a brief photo opportunity yesterday, but her head was elsewhere.
And she did not mention the mining industry once. How can you come to a region which has got the world's largest coal export port and not talk about the single most important industry in the region and for the state? It's incomprehensible to me.
The Minerals Council says despite the fact a large chunk of revenue from the new tax will be raised in New South Wales, very little has been promised in return.
The federal government has promised $2 billion in a regional infrastructure fund to Western Australia, $2 billion to Queensland for the same purpose, and so far $2 million to New South Wales.
That $2 million is earmarked for the Scone Railway overpass. Paul Lobb, NBN News. The Westpac rescue crew arrived back in Newcastle this morning after transporting a patient to the John Hunter who'd been struck by a car in Taree. At the same time, Coal Services, which provides insurance, training and rescue in mines, was making the largest ever single donation to the helicopter service, $1 million towards the cost of a new aircraft.
Worst case scenario we had put in our planning that we were borrowing the whole $8.5 million, but now that's been reduced by $1 million. So to Coal Services we take our hat off.
Coal Services Chairman and veteran miner Ron Land says the helicopter service shouldn't need to rely on donations.
I would like to see the New South Wales government and the federal government put some money back into the Hunter region from the taxes that it takes out of the coal industry and meet the full cost of this machine.
The arrival later this year of the second Bell 412 like this one in Newcastle will also mean a boost in the northwest, which will inherit one of the current Hunter helicopters.
Tamworth and the northwest New England are going to have a huge win out of this also in that they will have 2 helicopters. Whilst we haven't got 2 crews up there at this stage and probably won't have for a number of years, they will have a fit machine to fly pretty much 24 hours.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
When you've been waiting for a taxi for far too long, this can be a sight for sore eyes. There are plans for 14 new bus services in Beaumont Street between 12 and 4 a.m. And according to the Hamilton Liquor Accord, they've been a long time coming.
It's critical that we get everybody out as quickly as possible and as safely as possible home. You can't do that without transport. We all know the taxis are stretched to their limit.
Representatives from Newcastle Buses met with publicans and police today to discuss transport improvements and the new timetable. There's one major problem.
It was all done for 1:30 a.m. lockout, but unfortunately we're now in another fight and the bus services have to hold back.
A decision on the switch from a 1:30 to 1 a.m. lockout in Hamilton is due in 2 weeks. Hoteliers want a uniform time across the city.
We would start this tomorrow, but with the split between 1:30 lockout in Newcastle and 1 o'clock lockout in Hamilton, it's nearly impossible for the buses to do and extremely expensive.
The Liquor Accord is also planning a Walk Safe promotion, which encourages patrons to consider their actions when leaving a hotel.
The last thing we want is any accidents.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The Barrington Tops has become a winter whiteout, and groups of families and friends are taking full advantage. But rangers say the landscape's natural beauty is deceptive, masking many hazards.
These roads ice up and become extremely slippery, and I suppose what we're after is trying to just let the people know to be careful when they come into these areas.
The National Parks and Wildlife Service says despite warnings, all too often people become stranded and need rescuing.
If people do get trapped up here, how hard is it to get them out?
Well, you're talking, you're a couple of hours away from any sort of help. getting people to the area is very difficult.
The scenery here is simply stunning. There's snow as far as the eye can see and clear blue skies overhead. But the weather here at the Barrington Tops can turn treacherous in a matter of minutes. And that's what makes the area so dangerous.
And the reality is that they could get in but find themselves not being able to get back out again.
Even today, fallen trees blocked roads and it can take hours for crews to clear them. Emergency services say there are a few things visitors should bring.
Make sure they pack all their safety gear, warm clothing, food, and obviously the last thing they need to pack is just a bit of common sense.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The sight and sound of Australia's Black Hawk helicopters commands attention. Two of the aircraft growled their way into the Newcastle suburb of Carrington today, delighting local schoolchildren who had advanced warning of the touchdown. NBN News was lucky enough to climb aboard for a brief flight over the city ahead of a training operation scheduled for next Wednesday and Thursday. During the coming exercise, up to 4 Black Hawk crews will use Newcastle to practice some essential skills.
Predominantly formation flying, hovering low over buildings with a highly lit background, and also operating low over water.
As well as Sydney and Wollongong, Newcastle has been chosen for its variety of terrain. The operations, day and night, will involve exercises over the city and Nobby's Headland. Stockton Beach will also provide a unique desert-like environment, and air crews will use a coal ship anchored off the coast for a simulated boarding. Australia's fleet of 35 Black Hawks is tasked with everything from anti-terrorism to frontline combat.
Is basically just a flying taxi. And we pick up people, move them. But it's a hardened aircraft. It's capable of defending itself, and it's operated particularly with us, with a very highly skilled crew.
And for civilians, a flight in one is a real buzz. The power of the Black Hawk is amazing, the troop carrier of the skies. And the people of Newcastle will get a much closer look at these awesome machines next week. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There were no signs of pre-finals pressure today. The Knights spent the morning inside, clearly thriving after what they achieved outdoors on Monday night.
I'm really pleased for the boys and happy to see them getting some confidence out of that.
Some have every reason to smile. Aquila Uwate sits on top of the NRL try-scoring ladder, and another hat-trick would certainly help at this end of the season.
I'm not really concentrating on top try scorer. I'm just trying to do my best out there and trying to win the games, especially the last 6 games.
The Knights can't afford to let one go against the Dogs on Sunday, and Rick Stone isn't taking any chances. The forwards will line up in pretty much the same order. Shannon McDonald will start at fullback again, and Kurt Gidley is looking at a permanent move to the halves.
Yeah, we were a little bit more composed. We got through our game plan a little bit better.
That plan no longer includes Corey Patterson. He needs a shoulder reconstruction and won't play again for at least 6 months.
He's basically got a needle probably from round 3 to round 20, so to get out of the park and play. So assessment to his courage that he's lasted that long.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
A very fast train network could change the way Australians travel. Julia Gillard has pledged $20 million to determine the feasibility of such a rail link between Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney and Brisbane. The federal member for Newcastle says if re-elected, the government would begin the 18-month study this year, with the focus being the Sydney to Newcastle leg.
This is seen as the commuter belt, Newcastle to Sydney, Central Coast. It is the one that has the numbers.
Despite the announcement's timing, Ms Grierson says it's not an election ploy or about securing the Green vote.
This is not about Labor securing anything but the future of the people of Newcastle and the growth potential for New South Wales and the east coast of Australia.
A very fast train would reduce the rail journey time between Sydney to Newcastle to less than an hour, and it's also welcome news to those living on the Central Coast.
This feasibility study is a sensible and responsible economic decision.
It's not the first time a high-speed rail link has been proposed. The Carr government promised to build a very fast train 12 years ago, while the Hawke government funded a cost and benefit study back in 1991. The business sector says it will work to make sure the study comes to fruition.
Cynical people would suggest it's just another study and it will be talk. We're certainly calling on the coalition as well to support it, to put some numbers behind it.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Already this winter, there's been 600 house fires across the state, resulting in 5 deaths and more than 100 injuries. 37 of those fires have been in the Newcastle area, with 7 people injured. Now, firefighters have teamed up with GIO Insurance to offer an online safety audit for homes.
It takes them on a virtual tour through their own home, and by answering the questions that are asked, it will then give a checklist at the end if there needs to be any improvements made.
It can be found at homefiresafetyaudit.com.au. Meantime, National Parks and Wildlife crews in the Hunter are busy preparing for the bushfire season. In this exercise, park officers trained for being overrun by an advancing bushfire, a situation Graham Smith has endured for real 6 times.
It's scary. You don't have much time. You've got the right training, you've got the right equipment, and as what you saw today, it's practice for it.
The service's 80 firefighters in the Hunter have spent recent months lighting fires rather than putting them out.
We've got about 10,500 hectares of hazard reductions behind us so far this year, and we've got another 10,000 hectares we're planning to get in before the fire season.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It was all about networking at the Hunter Homelessness Forum. Each year, dozens of agencies meet to work out how they can help each other help the needy.
It's about how we work together, and it's about how we don't waste our resources that we have. They're pretty they're not big, and so if we can work together, we do have a big pot.
Last year's meeting led to the inaugural Hunter Homeless Connect Day, in which more than 1,500 people in danger of becoming homeless were offered free advice, food and basic amenities. So far, the forums have directly benefited many frontline services like the Soul Cafe, which provides 800 meals a week for people in need.
It's helped us in referring the people that come into our cafe for a free meal. We know where to send them to for other needs.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
More than 65 years after returning from the Western Front, Yaroslav Novak was recognised by his homeland's Consul General.
It's a great pleasure for me, especially knowing that one member of my family, my grandpa, he served in the Western Legions as well.
The 89-year-old joined a handful of soldiers to receive the Cross of Military Defence, and like all genuine heroes, he was nonplussed about all the fuss.
I didn't fought the war to receive the big medals and receive the big rank there, but we fought the war so that the world would be better, and I personally feel we partly achieved it.
Mr. Novak joined the Czech squadron at 24 years of age after escaping the Nazis. He then moved to Britain, where he fought German forces alongside the Royal Air Force.
And those days have been my best years of my life.
A constant by his side since 1944, Bobby the Rabbit.
And I flew with the Bobbies through the whole war. He was with me on every mission, my best friend.
And all that attention proved thirsty work. The decorated war hero celebrated the moment by enjoying a Czech lager and a chinwag with a fellow veteran. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Megan Ashton is one house-proud young woman. With the help of service provider Ability Options, the 21-year-old has created a comfortable home in her modest Merriweather unit. What have they done for you?
Everything.
What kind of help do they give you?
Cooking, housework.
Megan has a moderate intellectual disability, and when she first moved out of the family home 9 months ago, she struggled, becoming reclusive and depressed.
She was struggling a little bit with her life and managing her life, and she needed some life skills. And when we started working with Megan, we could see change almost immediately, and she's growing and becoming more positive.
She's even eating better. It was a cheese sandwich today, but Megan also likes to tackle difficult dishes. What do you like cooking?
Curry sausages.
Yum. Can we stay for lunch?
No.
Megan's cheeky personality also shines in street soccer. She now plays every week.
I have my great friend Vanessa, and we muck up every Thursday.
Relatively new to Newcastle, Ability Options is looking to help more people like Megan live independently.
And we're looking at that level playing field that Ability Options is really talking about at the moment, the level playing field where Megan is part of the society, doing her thing just like everybody else.
The sun was out as the Jets boarded the bus to Sydney, but it's the recent rain that has dampened their preparations and frustrated Branko Kalina.
Not enough trial games, not enough training sessions, particularly over the last couple of weeks, and players still lacking match fitness due to coming back from injuries.
That's a stark contrast to the Jets' first-round opponent.
They've got an advantage over other teams because they played 6 hard games or 7 in the Champions League.
While it's not his first choice 15 with Tarek Elrich and the imports left behind, Kalina's still been able to choose a strong squad for the A-League opener. It'll feature some of the new faces, but just where they'll line up is unclear.
They've brought a different aspect to our game, a bit more pace and power up top with the boy Brocky and Zankovic, so it makes for good things.
You'd think after playing for New Zealand in the World Cup, Jeremy Brocky would be a shoo-in, but even he was relieved to be given the nod after recovering from a calf strain.
The last 2 days I've been good and kept up, and don't think I've been too far off the pace. Just keep trying to work off the buzz from the World Cup, but now got a job to do, and that's try and do as well as I can for Newcastle and try and score a few goals.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
Well, I enjoyed it so much, and I get a real kick out of doing it, and I'm helping somebody else, and that's why.
When is a debate not a debate? When it's called a forum. Organised by the National Seniors, the Patterson Showdown had the hallmarks of a political debate and even plenty of passion. More than half the people living in the electorate are aged over 50, so it wasn't surprising that health dominated today's talks. And it's that topic that Labor candidate Jim Arneman has challenged the incumbent to publicly debate. Was it a debate?
Look, I don't think it was a debate. I think it was more of a friendly chat.
There was a lot of discussion on health, and I hope that satisfies Mr Arman's publicity stunts for a debate on health.
Some of the seniors here, though, were left with more questions than answers.
Just by hearing the range of policies, I was still undecided or not able to declare how I was going to vote.
I still think there's a lot more that needs to be spoken about.
Debate or not, an impromptu audience poll by NBN News gave Bob Baldwin the nod by 1 vote. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
The family just like to be left alone. They're not going to answer any more questions. The focus has just got way out of control here. It's all about Kaisha. They just want a home.
Lake Macquarie's assets, infrastructure and council services are all going under the financial microscope. Council officers have been tasked with finding up to $15 million worth of fat to trim off the organisation's operational budget.
We're not forecasting right now just what might be happening, but we do know that something significant is going to happen.
That something significant means, at the very least, many services will be greatly reduced, if not cut altogether.
Of course it's going to upset people, but the thing is that there is a financial crisis occurring in local government across New South Wales.
Mayor Piper says decades of forced rate pegging and cost shifting from the state government has put the council in its current financial position. Services that are expected to be targeted include the construction of footpaths, the number of pools and libraries in council ownership, park maintenance and waste collection. While childcare, the city's art gallery and council jobs will more than likely remain unaffected. Ratepayers are also being assured no cuts are set in concrete.
No decision has been made about cutting any of those areas, just to examine whether or not there's a reasonable possibility of savings in those particular areas.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. There was some good news at the Hunter Development Corporation's open board meeting this morning. Remediation work in Area 1 of the old BHP site, shown here in yellow, has been completed, with the land now ready to be used for port-related infrastructure. That project, along with dredging taking place in the Hunter River, is expected to greatly increase the port's capacity.
We have dreams in the Hunter that our port is the most efficient port in this side of the world. We've always dreamed about containers and other things coming to our port, and the Newcastle Port Authority is a lead on those issues.
Although just when the work will be completed remains unclear, with tenders yet to be finalised.
Because this is a difficult site, and if you really put artificial timeframes on, you won't get the optimum outcomes.
Meanwhile, construction of Bildev's industrial park, which will cover the areas shown here in red, should begin within 18 months and house some of the Hunter's biggest businesses.
The strength of the region comes from the port and from the coal industry, so those sort of industries will naturally see that BHP site as a place to locate.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We were trying to go for the largest bonfire in the world, but we found that that's 40 metres high. So we're just going to start off with this year and see what happens in the future.
Backing up from Monday's strong win over Manly has been easier said than done. Ben Cross didn't train today due to the flu, while Con Mika didn't see out the session after tearing his hamstring. Given the already long casualty list, it didn't make for a great lead-up to a game the Knights simply must win.
We always make it hard for ourselves in this back end of the year, but yeah, we've got to win games, and we've certainly got to win this weekend to be still in it.
Cameron Serraldo will come in for Mika, but all the Knights will be on the lookout for a former Newcastle junior who's now at the Dogs, state rake Michael Ennis.
When Michael Ennis plays well and creative around the dummy half region, probably some attacking kicks as well. I think the Bulldogs generally play well.
Aside from his football skills, it's his ability to frustrate other teams, which the Knights know they can't fall for on Sunday.
That's certainly part of his game, and he's a competitor, I suppose, and that's probably why he has that sort of annoying traits, because he's a competitor.
Both teams will be fighting for survival, with the loser to be out of finals contention.
We're not looking too much about our finals. We're just concentrate on getting ourselves ready, each day, and preparing ourselves to make sure that every time we play now, we've got no regrets, and so far so good.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Given the new faces in the squad and the limited pre-season action, the Jets fly into tonight's game against Adelaide as something of an unknown quantity, but hope to hit the ground running.
There are points to be had, so if you can grab them, then why not?
One of the club's big off-season buys, Casey Weirman, will anchor Newcastle's midfield, helping to direct play and attack, but more importantly, in defence.
I think we've had a good preparation and we look fairly stable defensively. So I think we're going to be in the game until the last seconds.
The skipper will demand that and just hopes the Jets put their pre-season practice into play.
You've got to be mentally strong. You've got to have the right attitude, and what we've worked on is the defensive shape as a team, not as individuals, this pre-season.
Win, lose or draw, it'll be a big night for the likes of Marco Jesic, who returns to the A-League after a third knee reconstruction. But everyone hopes Newcastle can start by claiming all 3 competition points.
It's not the end of the world, but you always want to have a good beginning to set yourself up for the rest of the year.
Rising before the dawn and riding his bike to the beach, the 17-year-old high school student takes every day as it comes. A golden sunrise and small surf, or wild, unwelcoming waves.
There was a couple of days it's been really hard. A lot of the time riding down on the beach when it's been really windy, and that's been really hard because the board's like a sail on the back.
For Ian Fletcher, it all started as a 100-day challenge to raise money for hospital clown doctors. But with the job done and $6,000 in the kitty, the calendar just kept ticking over. Now, after broken boards and leg ropes, a bout of the flu, a concussion, worn-out wetsuits, and lots of good company, Ian's marathon effort will end tomorrow at 435 days. But his love of surfing goes on.
We're going to the snow on Sunday. It'll be good. Give it away then. But we'll be surfing again when I get back.
Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
A family devastated. 5-year-old Kyra was trapped inside her grandmother Dawn's home after it erupted in flames at 10 o'clock this morning. Neighbours witnessed her parents' frantic efforts to locate her.
I could hear the mother screaming. I could hear the father screaming. As I've looked over the back fence, I could see the father running around in the pool area trying to find or look for his daughter.
The scene so traumatic, extended family members were kept away.
I can't even get in to see her. The police are just keeping everyone away from her at the moment.
Neighbours say the fire took hold of the home within minutes, with its flames reaching up to 10 metres high, and that despite their best efforts, little could be done to save the young girl.
Kim Dunster's son was one who tried.
He said he tried to help her. He tried to get close, but he just couldn't get near her. He got back and he was just screaming. He was crying. He said, I said, you did try. I said, you did your best. I said, all you can do, you just tried. Yeah, it was horrible.
Detectives and firefighters are investigating.
And at this point, it's not clear as to how or where the fire has started.
Just 4 hours earlier, this home in Hamilton was destroyed by fire. The blaze also spread to Greg Loughran's house. He escaped with his partner and 2 daughters just in time.
So I had to just run out on the street and just watched it all burn around me, sort of stuff.
Christopher Smith risked his life making sure everyone was safe.
And as soon as I heard that there was kids and people in the house, so I just sort of just had a gut feeling to, just to risk it all and just like go inside the house.
It took 25 firefighters half an hour to bring the flames under control. A 50-year-old man was rushed to John Hunter Hospital in a critical condition. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A tiring flight from Adelaide to Sydney, followed by a bus ride up the freeway. It's a trip to the doctor which will decide Nikolai Topor-Stanley's immediate playing future. Injuring his knee just before half-time, it forced the big defender from the field, and his coach knows an extended timeout would be less than ideal.
The early indications are that it may not be as serious as we thought, but we'll stay reserved on that comment.
The Jets began their campaign full of running last night, followed by some ugly work from Red's teammates. Paul Reed's effort on Casey Weirman threatened to get right out of hand. Half-time helped calm all that down, before Newcastle started the second stanza much like it did the first. It was Adelaide, though, who thought it had found the winner. But the offside flag was up, saving the Jets. They'll host the Melbourne Heart next Friday in their first home game for the season.
NBN News with Jane Goldsmith.
Tonight, a community's anguish as a fire rips through a house near Newcastle, killing a young girl.
As I've looked over the back fence, I could see the father running around in the pool area trying to find or look for his daughter.
A remarkable escape after a plane crashes in a Melbourne backyard. And together again, but Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd won't campaign side by side. It's been a horrendous day for firefighters in the Hunter, with separate blazes ripping through 2 houses and taking a terrible human toll. A 5-year-old girl lost her life in one fire after becoming trapped inside her grandmother's home.
A family devastated. 5-year-old Kyra was trapped inside her grandmother Dawn's home after it erupted in flames at 10 o'clock this morning. Neighbours witnessed her parents' frantic efforts to locate her.
I could hear the mother screaming. I could hear the father screaming. As I've looked over the back fence, I could see the father running around in the pool area trying to find or look for his daughter.
The scene so traumatic, extended family members were kept away.
I can't even get in to see her. The police just keeping everyone away from her at the moment.
Neighbours say the fire took hold of the home within minutes, with its flames reaching up to 10 metres high, and that despite their best efforts, little could be done to save the young girl.
Kim Dunster's son was one who tried.
He said he tried to help her. He tried to get close, but he just couldn't get near her. He got back and he was just screaming. He was crying. He said, I said, you did try. I said, you did your best. I said, all you can do, you just tried. Yeah, it was horrible.
Detectives and firefighters are investigating.
And at this point, it's not clear as to how or where the fire has started.
Just 4 hours earlier, this home in Hamilton was destroyed by fire. The blaze also spread to Greg Loughran's house. He escaped with his partner and 2 daughters just in time.
So I had to just run out on the street and just watched it all burn around me, sort of stuff.
Christopher Smith risked his life making sure everyone was safe.
And as soon as I heard that there was kids and people in the house, so I just sort of just had a gut feeling to, just to risk it all and just like go inside the house.
It took 25 firefighters half an hour to bring the flames under control. A 50-year-old man was rushed to John Hunter Hospital in a critical condition. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
There's been an incredible escape by the female pilot and passenger of a light aircraft which crash-landed in a Melbourne backyard. The Cessna was coming in to land at a nearby airport when it ran out of fuel, forcing the pilot to bring it down. No one was seriously injured. It's the defining image of the campaign so far. Prime Minister Gillard alongside the man she ousted from the top job. In a tightly controlled event, Ms Gillard and her former boss tried to present a united front amid more polls showing Labor's campaign is stuck in the doldrums.
We've waited 6 weeks for these pictures. Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd side by side for the first time since she knifed him in the back. A nervous laugh. Rudd businesslike, no handshake for the cameras, barely a glance between them, no eye contact. As Senator John Faulkner and party strategist helped plot his role to save the campaign.
It's just what happens with Abbott's health position.
A heavily stage-managed 70-second picture opportunity. 1 TV camera, 1 photographer, no questions. It's the image Labor wants, even if it's an uneasy truth.
Kevin and I had a positive and constructive discussion.
There are no details of what he'll do. The PM gave no details of what was said. There was no comment from Rudd. And while he'll go to Labor's launch, don't expect any more get-togethers.
Kevin and I, to maximise spread, will be campaigning in different places.
The pariah has become the messiah, and Kevin Rudd has to rescue the Prime Minister.
It's all about trying to save marginal Queensland and New South Wales seats. And Julia Gillard was trying to do just that at Brisbane's Royal Show with partner Tim Matheson. If the latest Nielsen poll's right, she'll need all this and more. Labor's primary vote is stuck at 36, the coalition down but still well ahead. After preferences, Labor's up 1 to 49 but still behind the coalition on 51. Julia Gillard still preferred Prime Minister. The PM tried to win over seniors at a Brisbane nursing home with a $100 million assistance package. But haunted by another former leader, Mark Latham, a man who had no answer for Labor, but now has plenty of questions as he plays reporter, confronting the PM over complaints about his presence.
Can I just ask you why the Labor Party's made a complaint about me working for Channel 9?
I don't know anything about that, Mark. If you want to work for Channel 9, that's the matter for you.
Tony Abbott's in Brisbane tonight preparing for his official launch tomorrow, the big set piece of his campaign that he hopes will give him even more momentum in the last 2 weeks.
Hi, Tony Abbott.
Earlier, the volunteer firefighter was in Kinglake, ravaged on Black Saturday, committing the coalition to the Royal Commission findings and a $10 million early detection system.
A witness has come forward in the case of missing Sydney girl Kaisha Abrahams, offering new information to police. Simon Boda is covering the case and filed this report.
Well, contrary to earlier reports that Kaisha wasn't seen by anybody else apart from her immediate family for the 3 weeks prior to her disappearance, A witness has now come forward to tell police that they actually saw Kaisha with her mother about a week before she disappeared last Sunday. Now that is a crucial development as police piece together the time frame of events leading up to Kaisha's disappearance. Homicide Squad detectives called in on Kaisha's mother and stepfather to let them know of the latest developments this afternoon as police continue their search of waterways and canals around this area for any clues. Her family, meantime, are still holed up in a hotel not far from the family home. They've been surrounded by support from family and friends, and in fact, one of the families turned up today carrying who we believe to be Kaisha's 3-year-old sister. They are just desperate for news, and so far they're not getting any positive news at all.
Simon Boda there. The face of Myer, Jennifer Hawkins, has refused to buy into the scandal surrounding rival chain David Jones, despite it dominating discussion at a store opening today. It comes amid claims DJ should settle the case and stop the negative publicity.
Armed with scissors, Myer's it girl is afforded the honour. A new store for the retail giant and yet another knife in the back for their wounded rivals, David Jones.
Are you pretty glad to be associated with Myer and not David Jones?
Oh, well, I'm happy to be associated with Myer, definitely.
Jennifer Hawkins is Myer's main ambassador, but today the topic was mostly about DJs. Had she ever met the former boss, Mark McGuinness?
No, I've never met him.
Or whether she had any sympathy for the alleged victim in the sexual harassment case.
I just prefer not to comment on it because I think that it always comes around, and I think that's the best way to be.
The crowds, the publicity, it may be just too much to bear for David Jones, and there's growing talk now that the retail giant should bite the bullet and settle the case to stop the damage. Meanwhile, the matter continues to get messy. The alleged victim, Christy Fraser-Kirk, says she's become the target of a smear campaign. Following a newspaper report, she's a serial complainer. And designer Alana Hill was holding her so-called sorry sale, an apology for making light of the McInnes sex scandal. Profits from the sale will go to a charity for abused women. Damien Ryan, NBN News.
Robbie Williams is set to break 1 million hearts this weekend when he marries his long-term girlfriend on an island off the coast of California. The singer has famously avoided commitment for years, but American actress Ada Field finally won him over.
It's all but official. One of the world's most eligible bachelors is off the market. She was me. Robbie's been a busy single man. There's a long list of famous exes, including All Saints star Nicole Appleton, Cameron Diaz, and Rod Stewart's former wife, Rachel Hunter. But in 2006, he fell hard for TV actress Ada Field.
He's had a lot of good and bad things in his life and a few challenges, as we know, with drink and drugs and stuff like that. But I actually believe that this Ada is obviously a calming influence on him.
For most of the time these days, Robbie Williams lives here at this very exclusive gated community in Beverly Hills, California, which makes sense now considering Ada is an American. But she was in Australia when he actually popped the question. Will you marry me, baby?
Yes, I'll marry you.
Oh my God, thanks for doing it in front of us. For party boy Robbie, unusually, this wedding will be quite low-key. A small group of family and friends will be here on Santa Catalina, a small island off the Californian coast. But on the no-show list, because they already had other plans, the rest of Take That, the group he so famously left and is about to return to. For the moment, that union is playing second fiddle to this one. That's the way it's gonna be. Robert Penfold, NBN News.
It's official. Princess Mary is expecting twins and they're due in January. The Danish royal palace made the announcement just a day after the country's magazines reported she was pregnant. What they didn't know is that she's having 2 babies. 38-year-old Mary and Crown Prince Frederick already have 2 children, Christian and Isabella. And Jim, you heard it here first.
Yeah, good stuff. Well done. Congratulations.
Over to sport now, of course, with Jim Callanan.
Thanks, Jane. To AFL first, and the Sydney Swans finals prospects have received a boost after they beat Hawthorn at the SCG. Last night, Carlton thumped Essendon, while this afternoon, North Melbourne and the Swans also enjoyed big wins. Sydney's victory was set up in the first half when it kicked 10 goals to 3. After booting 19 straight behinds to start his AFL career, Lewis Jetta finally found his first goal in the 44-point win. Rugby League has lost one of its biggest names for the rest of the season. Cowboy star Jonathan Thurston injured his ankle during the loss to Brisbane. He'll be back in time for the Four Nations tests in October. The Broncos won a fiery game 34-26. The Eels look finished after going down heavily to the Titans.
It's close to flatlining after in the second half against the Titans. Campbell back for Rogers! Leading 12-0 at the break, the Eels couldn't produce the same effort, with the Titans ramming home 6 unanswered tries. And Scott Prince had his fingerprints on all of them. Here's Prince rolling it in.
Rugby League has lost one of its biggest names for the rest of the season. Cowboy star Jonathan Thurston injured his ankle during the loss to Brisbane. He'll be back in time for the Four Nations tests in October. The Broncos won a fiery game 34-26. The Eels look finished after going down heavily to the Titans.
The Eels season is close to flatlining after Parramatta failed to score a point in the second half against the Titans. Campbell back for Rogers! Leading 12-0 at the break, the Eels couldn't produce the same effort, with the Titans ramming home 6 unanswered tries. And Scott Prince had his fingerprints on all of them. Here's Prince rolling it in. Oh, it'll be a goal catch try! In what looked a harmless tackle, Darren Lockyer roped in Jonathan Thurston, and that was the end of the Cowboys captain. Thurston told his club doctor he heard something snap when his right ankle was twisted, and Thurston couldn't even stand up after that.
It's a dramatic moment.
The Broncos got a fair taste of the Wild West. Once again, Sam Thaiday didn't like the treatment being handed out, and in the end he was one of 3 players sent to the sin bin.
We've got 3, do I hear 4, do I hear 5?
Lockyer also didn't finish the game. He went off holding his ribs, and the Broncos can't lose that leadership.
It was more precautionary towards the end there, so just see how it pulls up.
And a greyhound at Casino has gambled on a shortcut after realising it couldn't keep up with the rest of the field. Oh Sweet Pea jumped the fence, obviously not keen on the 620-metre distance. The extreme inside run was illegal, but going cross-country sort of paid off. Oh Sweet Pea went from last to first past the post. Good luck if you've got to collect on that one.
Smart dog, that one.
That's today's sport.
Thanks, Jim. Finally, any teenagers out there who fancy themselves as skateboard champions should watch out for 2 tiny brothers from Sydney. They're tipped as stars of the future, and one of them can't even stand up yet.
He's so small you'd almost miss him, but on all fours, Tenzin Dodds Bowering is a skate sensation. Cute, brave, a sponsor's dream. The 3-year-old and his brother Ty have already rolled onto Talent Scout's radars.
Do you want to be a professional skater?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you can't say no to that. If you skate and you want to skate, you want to be a pro.
Flannelette and skinny jeans, they have the look nailed. Of course, being this small in a massive bowl does have its challenges.
How can I get up here?
Big brother always knows.
Come on, then. Try and get it.
You're a good brother.
That's what he says. But sometimes he goes, I love you, Ty. And then next thing you know, he'll go, I hate you, Ty.
Rather than watch action TV, Mum Jules prefers to see her boys live it.
I have a lot of people come up and ask me, you know, oh, how can you let them do that? And I just think, just let him go for it, you know. He knows his limits.
When are you going to start standing up?
When I'm big.
Yes? How big? When you're 4.
Actually, sitting and skating isn't as easy as it looks.
Let's do that again.
Ah, to be young and fearless again.
Very cute story.
Oh, nice one. Atta boys, keep it going.
And that's our special web edition of our news for this Saturday.
Thanks for your company and from all the team here.
Good night.
Good night.